When you picture a Roman battle, you probably think of what Hollywood shows you: shining armor, slow motion sword fights, and noble speeches before men charge across open fields. But the truth is far more brutal, chaotic, and terrifying. A real Roman battle wasn't a clean clash of heroes. It was a living nightmare of blood, discipline, and organized killing, an experience so violent and exhausting that even the victors often collapsed from exhaustion or trauma. To understand what actually happened in a Roman battle, we have to step into the sandals of a legionary, a professional soldier of Rome, trained to fight, kill, and survive as part of one of the most disciplined armies in history. The day before battle, the legion didn't rest in silence or pray for glory. They built. Roman soldiers always built. They dug ditches, raised palisades, and fortified their camps with geometric precision. Even on the eve of death, they worked like engineers. Their discipline was their armor. At dawn, orders came down from the commander, sometimes from men like Julius Caesar or Scipio Africanus, whose calm planning decided the fate of nations. The soldiers ate a light meal, grain porridge or bread, washed down with water or sour wine. They checked their weapons, oiled their armor, and rubbed dust on their faces to reduce the glare of the sun. Each man carried about 90 pounds of gear: armor, weapons, rations, and tools. They didn't march to battle as ragtag warriors, they moved like a machine. The Roman army was divided into units called legions, each with about 5,000 men. Within that were smaller groups, centuries led by centurions, tough veterans with scarred faces and iron voices. A centurion didn't lead from the rear. He fought in the front, shouting orders over the roar of the battlefield, using a vine staff to strike any soldier who faltered. Before battle began, there was sound, not silence, never silence. The air thundered with the beating of war drums, the blare of trumpets called tuba, and the rhythmic chant of soldiers shouting the name of Rome. Dust rose from thousands of feet, stamping the earth. Opposite them, the enemy army mirrored the same madness, their own war cries, banners, and fear. Then, as the two sides drew close, the killing began. Roman soldiers didn't charge in wild chaos like movie heroes. They advanced in tight formation, shields locked together, forming a living wall. This formation, called the testudo, or tortoise, could move forward even under heavy fire from arrows or stones. But when battle was close, they opened up. Each man fought in the manipular formation, shoulder to shoulder, leaving just enough space to swing his sword. The Roman sword, the gladius, was short and deadly, designed not for slashing, but for stabbing. A deep stab wound to the stomach or chest was far more lethal than a cut. So while enemies swung great swords and axes, Romans stepped in close and thrust over and over with cold precision. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't beautiful. It was methodical, bloody work. Before swords even clashed, though, the Romans unleashed their secret weapon, the pilum, a heavy throwing spear. Each soldier carried two. The pilum was designed to bend upon impact, making enemy shields useless. Imagine a rain of thousands of spears descending from the sky, striking armor, faces, horses. Those who survived often found themselves disarmed and terrified as the Romans advanced behind their volley. The first few minutes of battle were the loudest and the most horrifying. The sound of iron on iron, the grunts of men locking shields, the screams of the dying. Dust and blood filled the air. Soldiers were crushed, trampled, or disemboweled in the press of bodies. A Roman soldier didn't see a battlefield the way we imagine it. He saw the back of the man in front of him, the glint of an enemy's helmet through the haze, and the flash of a sword aimed at his throat. The battle line was a churning, suffocating mass where vision and coordination were limited, but that's where Roman discipline made the difference. Unlike most armies of the ancient world, the Romans rotated their front lines. After a few minutes of fighting, fresh men stepped forward while the exhausted ones pulled back. This constant rotation kept their lines strong while the enemy weakened. It was genius in its simplicity and deadly in effect. Commanders watched from the rear, shouting orders through trumpets and flags. They could move entire formations in minutes, something no other army could do at the time. Battles weren't just fought with strength, but with brains. If the enemy began to break, the Romans pressed harder. The cavalry, fast-moving soldiers on horseback, would circle around to strike from behind. Once panic began, it spread like fire. Ancient soldiers often didn't die fighting. They died running, cut down as they fled. Roman soldiers were taught to never break formation, never chase glory, and never fight alone. To lose discipline was to lose everything. After victory came the aftermath, and this part was even uglier than the fight itself. The wounded lay everywhere, screaming for help. There were no medics rushing in with bandages. Those who could walk were treated, those who couldn't were left to die. Roman medics, called medici, tended to soldiers near the camp using wine, honey, and hot irons to cauterize wounds. The smell of burnt flesh was common. But there was no time for mourning. Roman soldiers were ordered to strip the dead of weapons and armor, to loot valuables, and to bury or burn corpses to prevent disease. The field after battle was a graveyard of men and metal. For every victory, thousands of lives were lost. And yet, the Romans kept fighting. They fought not because they loved war, but because war was their way of life. A Roman soldier could serve up to 25 years. He fought across deserts, mountains, and forests, often far from home, in wars that seemed endless. Hollywood likes to show battles as moments of glory, quick, clean, full of honor. But for the men who lived it, it was terror and exhaustion. A real Roman battle was not a few hours of fighting. It could last an entire day. Some battles stretched into the night, fought by torchlight in choking dust and darkness. Soldiers often fought until their hands blistered or their weapons broke. The heat from armor was suffocating, and dehydration killed almost as many as swords. There were no heroic duels between generals. Commanders rarely fought in the front. They were too valuable. The real heroes were the anonymous legionaries who stood their ground in silence, trusting the man beside them to do the same. Sometimes, though, even Roman discipline failed. At battles like Cannae, where Hannibal trapped the Romans in a double encirclement, entire legions were slaughtered in place. Tens of thousands of men died without room to swing a sword, suffocated or crushed beneath the weight of their comrades. It was one of the most horrifying defeats in Roman history. After such disasters, the survivors were often disgraced, forced to live in shame. But Rome always rebuilt. For every lost legion, another was raised. For every defeat, vengeance followed. That relentless resilience is what made Rome unstoppable. It's easy to admire their courage, but it's also important to understand the cost. A Roman soldier didn't fight for freedom or democracy. He fought for pay, land, or the promise of citizenship. He fought because not fighting meant death. And when he came home, if he came home, he carried the scars of battle in his body and mind. Some were rewarded with land and honor. Others were abandoned, crippled, forgotten by the empire they built. Roman battles were not heroic epics. They were brutal tests of endurance, organized chaos fueled by discipline, fear, and ambition. And yet, that cold efficiency changed the world. The Roman army didn't just conquer, it reshaped everything it touched. Its tactics influenced warfare for centuries. Its roads, forts, and camps still mark the landscape of Europe and beyond. The ghost of the Roman legion still marches in the structure of every modern army. When you see a movie showing warriors charging bravely into battle, remember that the real Romans didn't fight like that. They didn't scream, they didn't rush blindly. They advanced in silence, shields locked, step by step, turning the battlefield into a machine of death. It wasn't glorious, it wasn't cinematic, it was survival, and that, more than anything, was the secret of Rome's power. Every victory they won came at a human cost that's hard to imagine today. The blood that soaked into those ancient fields was the price of empire, paid by men whose names history never recorded. And that's what really happened in a Roman battle, not the polished version we see on screen, but the raw, brutal truth of what it took to build the greatest military force the ancient world had ever seen. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the real history behind the myths. Because sometimes the truth is even more shocking and more human than the legend.